Everybody, we'll give it a few moments for folks to get all joined in. There's a link in the chat to the minutes if anybody hasn't seen them already. And if you could drop your name in there on attendees, that would be awesome.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
We only seem to have view-only access to the doc.
Oh, that's odd. Let's see. Anyone who has a link can own. How about that? And I will fix the bit.ly also. Thank you. Well, I'll fix the bit.ly later, I guess, after the meeting, and we can just repaste it in the chat as others join if they bump into that. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got the recording going on. Just as a reminder, as with all of our community meetings, it is being recorded and on the internet, and I trust that we will all treat each other in a positive and collaborative way. So welcome, everybody. I think we've got nearly a critical mass. I see one or two names missing maybe in the participants from the release leads. But I wanted to kind of start with that today, go around and have each of the leads and any of the shadows who are here as well just very briefly introduce themselves. So I'll start. I'm Tim Pepper. I'm your release lead. I've been involved with Kubernetes for just barely about a year now, but I've been doing open source and systems development for 20 years. So this is kind of my wheelhouse. It's the type of stuff that I love to do. This really is what makes me tick. So I'm excited to be a part of this release. And I'll hand it off to Aish.
Hey all, I'm Aish. I am the release shadow for this release. I'm pretty new to Kubernetes. I've been in this area, working in this area only for the past 4 months now. I was the CI signal lead for 1.11, so trying something out new for 1.12. My day job is at Google. I work for the GKE EngProd team, so that's why I have more of the testing and the test and tran. The signal thing falls into my domain quite naturally from working for Google in that area. I really enjoyed the 1.11 work. As mentioned multiple times, it's a great team. It's extremely collaborative, and I got to learn a lot. And I'm hoping to learn much more this release and be of help to in whichever capacity I can.
So how about Mohammed next, our CI signal lead?
So okay, so hey guys, I'm Mahmoud Ishan Ahmed. I got involved into Kubernetes quite recently as well. I have been the CI signal shadow in the last release. I was shadowing Aishwarya. I learned a lot during that period, and I'm hoping that I can apply some of that and learn a lot more during the cycle. For my day job, I work as Red Hat, and I work mostly with developer tooling around OpenShift and Kubernetes. So yeah, if you guys want to know anything else, you can ask me. But that's it, I guess.
Okay, Thank you. I don't see Cole Wagner from our test infra side, so I'll go on to Gwen for our bug triage.
Hello, I'm Guinevere, or Gwen. Currently, I work at Samsung SDS, and I was shadowing Tim for bug triage on the last release, somewhat unofficially, but there was some shuffling around. And so now I'm finding myself in this position where I hope to be learning a lot about just the project on the whole and the structure, also who everyone is, which is always my favorite part. And yeah, so I will be the person nagging everyone.
To some extent, we all will be at times. We're a team. No, nobody will take that fall alone. So I'll go next to Doug McAckern, and then I might also have, oh, he dropped. I was going to say I'd have Caleb say something possibly briefly as well, but Doug is our branch manager, and he's in a somewhat unique position in that he hadn't shadowed prior because the branch manager role has been something that's been Google specific. And during this release, I slightly expect that we're going to be slightly stumbling our way through, but kind of graduating that role from one that was Google specific to actually community based. So Doug has been a gracious volunteer.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, most of my work so far, Kubernetes has been specific to vSphere cloud provider, other than a couple small fixes here and there. So I'm looking forward to branching out, pun intended. Yeah, it's exciting.
Thanks. How about Zach next, our docs lead?
Hola, everyone. I am Zach Arnold. I work as a software engineer for a finance company called Y Green Energy Fund. We're a teeny tiny little startup, but I was a cluster operator for our cluster, and we had enough issues that I was like, hey, there's some stuff that is not talked about and called out in the docs. So I started contributing, and here I sit. So it's been a whirlwind and an honor, and I think it is crazy how open this community is, and just kind of like I'm tickled to death that I get to rub shoulders with like the smartest people I've ever met in my life.
Awesome. How about next release notes, Nick Chase? I see you there. Yeah, you're okay.
I had to find the unmute button. Anyway.
And we don't get video. Normally, one of the best parts I think about having Nick on the team is we get to see.
It's true.
There we go. There we go. He's back here. He just come on up here. They want to see you.
There.
There he is. Oh. Okay. So all right. So the both of us are here now. Okay. Anyway. So I am Nick Chase, and that's my assistant. He has a lot of energy, but he doesn't type very well. Fortunately, I have, I think, 3 shadows this time around, which is awesome. This is my 4th release, I think. We hope to get it right one of these times. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we've been working towards a more automated process, and I will let Mike talk more about that because he's been the one who's actually been coding that. But I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you. And if you think you're going to nag, I really nag. So that's me.
And Caitlin on communications.
Hey everyone, I'm Caitlin Barnard, communications coordinator for 1.12. I've been involved somewhat in an unofficial or official capacity in the release process since I think 1.8, so it's been a lot of fun. I also help manage the Kubernetes blog and a lot of the web updates there. So looking forward to working with you all.
Awesome. And Caleb, as member emeritus and transitioning off of branch management, anything you want to say? I'm not sure if anybody else is having trouble, but you sound like you're underwater.
I've got the same issue.
Sorry, it's I will lead you to a wide area.
Yeah, we probably only got a few words out of that.
Is Google having a bandwidth problem?
Oh, well, we will get some of your words throughout the release, I'm sure, Caleb, and thanks for joining today. Would any of the shadows like to introduce themselves as well? We've got, I think did I count right, maybe 34 folks across the entire team between the leads and the set of shadows. For me, this is somewhat daunting, and that's a lot of people to keep track of and talk to and make sure we're mentoring and helping. But at the same time, I think it's really important that we have a little bit more pipeline. So I'm really happy that we have so many people who volunteered to try and get into the pipeline. So any of the shadows like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'll go. So this is Suraj. So yeah, hi, I'm Suraj Narwade. I'm a contributor and maintainer of the project Compose, which is in Kubernetes org. And for work, I work at Red Hat, and I basically work around application definition and developer experience and tooling around Kubernetes and OpenShift. And I'm looking forward to contribute to release team now. Thanks.
My name is Mike. I was a release note shadow in the last release, and I will be continuing on as release note shadow. I mostly, the niche that I've kind of carved out for myself is writing tools, writing the release notes generation tools. So I learned a lot personally last release about the kind of manual process that we go through to get notes from the commit log into what actually goes to users. So I'm trying to kind of encode more of that into the software this release. So, you might see me asking y'all for LGTMs on PRs and stuff, but I don't actually work anywhere that does anything super Kubernetes related. I work at an infrastructure analytics startup, and I just do this for fun because I love Kubernetes and we use it at work.
Well, I can go. Hi, everyone. My name's Travis. I'm shadowing Doug for branch management. I work at VMware. Only been there a few months, been doing open source development for the last 5 to 6 years. Previous companies at Red Hat and then Dell and then VMware, and fairly new to contributing to Kubernetes in the last 6 months. And I think this will be a great additional way to get more experience with that. Anybody else?
Hey, I'll jump in if you guys.
Oh yeah, our missing lead there.
Hey, sorry, I had a conflict before. Stephen Augustus. I am the features lead for 112. I was features shadow on 111. Apparently, I'm good enough at it to be the product management here now. So if you have features related issues, you need me to nag people on SIGs. I think we're all pretty good at nagging, or we'll all get really good at nagging. But excited to do the release team again. I think it's a really great way to contribute. It's a really great way to meet people in the community that are at different companies and see what they're working on. So hi, and happy to be here again.
Hey all, I'm Hannes. I work for Pivotal in London for a small team where we try to make ourselves useful for the Kubernetes community. And I'm shadowing the release branch management. Yeah, that's round about it.
I can go next and maybe say a couple of words. Hi, my name is Maria. I also work for Pivotal in London, and I'm Hannes's. Well, I guess I'm a shadow of a shadow because I'm shadowing Hannes in trying to find out more about how Kubernetes gets released.
All right, anybody else want to say hi?
Hi, this is Yang. So I've been working with Kubernetes since about a year ago, and I'm new to SIG release, shadowing branch manager. There may be a blog post by me on CNCF blog tomorrow. So if you want to know more about me, you can check it out. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Anybody else? Last call?
I can go if you want.
Sure, yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, my name is Anna McCann. I'll be shadow the Backtrace lead, Gwen. So I'm in a consulting company in France, and funny story, they recruit me in the last KubeCon. So I will be cloud engineer for the company and help their clients to build Kubernetes clusters.
Awesome. Welcome to the community and congratulations on the World Cup.
Thanks.
All right. I guess with that, I really want to just again say welcome to everybody. This is the third release I think that I'll be involved in. I kind of started paying a little bit of attention 4 ago, but got sucked in and have just found it really fun and collaborative and rewarding. The type of work that we're doing is important and valued by the community, and it doesn't happen without volunteers. So it's really awesome that all of you have chosen to take part in it. So the bit.ly link, I apologize for it not being editable. I've pasted, and for anybody who's joined late, I'll repaste an editable version of it in the Zoom chat, and then I'll get the link updated later. But wanted to kind of go through the schedule a little bit. Have had a few questions about different memberships over the last weeks, talk a few things about the retrospective, and then I would like to have, I guess, Stephen talk for a little bit about where we are on features, and then Mohammed just give us an update on current CI status. So I'll run through the first sets of things, and then hand it off to Stephen, and then we'll go to Mohammed. And I really like meetings that are collaborative, so feel free to raise your hand, like actually literally in the camera or on Zoom if your Zoom client has the little raise hand option, or just kind of like put your hand up in the chat with the little emoji or whatever, and let's hopefully make this actually a team. I shouldn't be the one talking most of the time, hopefully, even though I'm the lead. So schedule, in the minutes is the link, and those have gone around via email already. Hopefully no surprises there. Nothing significant really has changed from 111, but in a way that in itself is something to be mindful of, because 111 had some changes. So the most notable of that was that we shortened code slush and code freeze. In 111, we did that conditionally dependent on having a good CI signal. And early in the release, in this sort of time frame, the first month, Aish, as the CI lead, really drove that. And the community responded extremely collaboratively, positively, and we got a good clean CI signal, and that gave us confidence in shortening the code freeze period such that we didn't feel we needed nearly a month of time just to do stabilization. And if we can continue this and really cement that as part of the cultural status quo, just ongoing, that CI shows that tests are good, we'll be in a much better place over time as a project. So that's probably the biggest thing to note. And I guess I'll leave that there until we drop down to the retrospective items. So the other thing to talk about with scheduling is how we do meetings. So historically, it's always been kind of this Monday 10 a.m. meeting, and there have been doodles that have happened in the past and attempts, what's a better time, day, and there hasn't been a clear winner that came out of that versus this particular slot. Now, later in the cycle, we'll go to having Monday, Wednesday, Friday meetings, and then we'll go to where we actually have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all 5 days of the work week. And for that, we did, in the last cycle, shift some of the times around. It's a real challenge, especially as we've grown the team now and we have a bunch of shadows that are in a whole bunch of time zones. But I really want to emphasize, I don't know how to quite say this. There's no positive way to say it, maybe, spreading the pain. I don't want our folks in Europe or our folks in Asia to be the ones who are feeling pressure to attend meetings at inconvenient times. So what we did in the last cycle is a few of the days when we went to regular or daily sort of meetings instead of just the Monday regular meeting, we had those quite a bit earlier so that they were not so late or early, depending on your time zone. The other thing that I would like to propose, and we've got a few folks from Europe and at least one from Asia, I would be willing to have sort of a second follow-up meeting to this Monday meeting very early on Tuesday. It would be me choosing to take the time to get up very early on Tuesday to meet with folks that were in Europe or Asia time zones at a slightly better time for them, possibly, if there's interest. And then I would make a strong effort to not just be telling everybody what happened, but make this actually a productive meeting as well and bridge the two. So if we have two sets of people who are meeting at two different times, that I would be the facilitator bringing information across those. But I wonder if there's interest in that, or if people would prefer just a single cohesive meeting that's recorded and minutes to check back on. So for the folks in Europe and Asia especially, I'd really like to hear your voices here. Would you value a meeting that's 4 hours earlier than right now?
For me, this slot works. I mean, if it's earlier, that's also okay. But as long as it's not later, then this slot works for me.
Yeah, I guess the same here.
Might be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I guess it's the same thing here. Like this slot would be the best timing. Like, so right, it's right now at 10:30, 10:50 is now over here. So it's this slot is fine. It's okay in India. So
Maria?
I was about to say it might be worth trialing for a few sessions if it's not, however, a huge cost for you to wake up hours and like in, in the middle of the night, as long as it's not that early and it doesn't sort of, mess with your productivity and your health, really. But we can, we could, if you're up for it, we could maybe try it out for a few times and sort of see how successful that format is compared to the current one, and then iterate from there.
Yeah, I will say I'm not a morning person, but at this time of the year, because I'm fairly north in latitude, the sun is up so early that I end up awake. So, Yang Li?
Yeah, it's a better time for me, at least for me in China.
So, is there a time that would be better for you?
Sorry?
Is there a better time that you would suggest?
6 a.m. PST is fine for me.
6 a.m. PST would be fine. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and put that on the calendar for the next couple weeks, and we can see how it goes. I won't do it this week since you're here. No point repeating it in 20 hours just now, but starting next week, let's give it a try and see what happens. And you can flexibly see if one works better than the other, and we can give it a try and see.
Honestly, for me, 6 a.m. is PST, right? I'm on the West Coast of the United States, is better than the slot between 7 and 9, because that's where everything happens, all my commuting, all my school kid drop off. So that's just my 2 cents. So I would be willing to get up for a 6 a.m. meeting for sure. Okay. It's not a willingness to get up. It's literally, I can't. I have other obligations.
Yeah, life happens. We all have lives. All right, well, we'll give it a try and see what happens.
I'm on the East Coast, actually, so 6 a.m. is 9 a.m. for me. So that's actually works for me fine.
Okay. Well, let's give this a try and experiment, and then we'll see, especially as we have a more diverse set of folks from around the world in the shadow roles, especially as those come into prospective lead roles in 113, we want to have figured out whether there's some scheduling way or some way to have a set of collaborative meetings and note-taking and sharing of information that we can model and give to the 113 team, and in the hope of helping those people be successful as well. All right.
Just one thing related to the note-taking, since you brought it up. If we can get, at least on the weekly cadence or something, the minutes checked back into the release 112 directory, that would be wonderful, given that we had that snafu with the release notes in the previous minutes. Really do mean to add a secretary position to this.
You know, that's an interesting point. And I also, one thing that so just this weekend here, I'm in Portland, Oregon. Ahead of the OSCON conference, there's a thing called the Community Leadership Conference or Community Leadership Summit. And we had a discussion there about enabling folks around the world and with different tooling and things. And I'm not sure if there are other things that we might do beyond like this document being a Google Doc, putting it in GitHub is probably better for folks who may not have Google Docs access, doing things like that, or when we post videos, not just to YouTube, but also to some of the other platforms that are video hosting tools that are more native in other geographies, and that may be something that supplements and makes things a little more accessible for others. Just noting down post minutes to GitHub. Okay, so the next thing that had come up was group memberships. So all of the leads, I believe I've gone through and vetted, all the leads are members of the Kubernetes org, but there's a link there in the minutes for the shadows who are not. And this is something that I'd encourage you to work towards as you go through the shadow process. It's not something that's strictly required, but as you become more active in the community, it's a way of formally recognizing your contributions, and with that comes some accesses that if you move up into leadership roles become necessary. So it's a relatively lightweight process, but something to give a read through and be thinking about as you grow in your role within this community and leverage your opportunity here within the release team as a shadow to do that. The next one is the Kubernetes milestone maintainers. So I'm not sure how much everybody really needs access to this. Generally, it should be the SIG leads who have access, but historically, folks who've come onto the release team, we've gotten the impression that we need it and have asked for it, but then haven't necessarily needed to wield it. And I really think that comes down to one of the things that's kind of a fundamental of what we do on the release team is that we're facilitators more than choice makers. So something like the milestone maintainers group, that allows you to tag an issue or a PR in GitHub as going to be part of the milestone. So in this case, version 1.12. But that's a choice, a decision. And whether a particular feature or bug fix comes into the release, that really should be being made by the owning SIG. And really, the main place I've ended up using sort of this privilege to label things is just going through and bug triage when it's really clear that somebody had missed something It's obvious the choice has been made, but the bookkeeping hadn't quite followed. And I think maybe Nick or between release notes and docs and issue triage and CI signal, we on occasion will label things, but it's just where we at most notice that this was like, oh yeah, obvious. And rather than sort of trying to poke and remind somebody to just update their documentation, sometimes there's just no point nagging. You just label the thing and done. So, but that's not making the choice to say like, oh, this content is now going to be in the release. So I know a number of you all have requested access, and I think I granted a few, but generally if you don't have access, don't worry about it. If you find that you need it, ping me and we'll figure it out. So any questions there?
I just, yeah, like what you said, the default should be don't make decisions for others. I do, in the interest of practicality, think that it's a good idea to have the privilege for the situation that you mentioned.
And if that comes up for anybody where you go in Prowl, you type /milestone 112 and it doesn't work and you go, oh, I don't have it, feel free to poke me and we'll make it happen. So I guess onto some things from the retrospective as reminders. If you didn't see it, I encourage you to maybe take the time and look at the recordings of the retrospective. So those would have been, they're linked, I think, from the 1.11 minutes, the release minutes, Google Doc, or also the community meeting on Thursday, the minutes there. One of the retrospective sessions was held during the community meeting, so that's easily findable on YouTube, but the other session was within, I believe, the SIG release meeting. So the video of that's there, and if you have the time to look through and kind of hear the discussion, I think it's pretty informative to kind of hear the prior folks talking about the issues that they ran into, how they tried to resolve them, or the compromises they made, and maybe what got deferred to us, the things that weren't solved. And there are things that maybe aren't even near-term solvable, but are kind of ongoing issues that we're trying to wrap our heads around. So we try to have an ongoing conversation about that, and then we also try to capture as we go along. So the retrospective document for 1.12 is already created. Any week or any day as you're bumping into things, feel free to just note it down in that doc, because in 12 weeks, we're liable to have forgotten about them. But then we can circle back around and think and chat about them as we go. So some stuff that came up in the retrospective last time. I guess this first point on CI signal and really trying to form the culture around keeping CI tests passing. I really spoke to that just at the beginning of the meeting already, but just to reiterate that, that's a large part, I think, of how the last release went well. The next one are documentation deadlines. They're at least called aggressive. I don't know how aggressive I feel they are, and Gwen's shaking her head, and I'm gonna guess that Nick and Zach maybe would also disagree, but this is historically in our industry, like developers like, oh, I don't want to write docs right now type of a situation. So we have to gently and constructively nudge and remind folks that it's an important part of the process, an important part of what our output for a release is. And the earlier we start them, the easier it becomes, instead of waiting till the last moment. Similar to that is test cases and test additions. We as a release team, part of what we're doing is risk management, trying to assess the state of things and how to ensure that that is good and positive, healthy for the project. And we do that through test results. If we have major features that come into the release and those land right at the end of code freeze but don't have tests yet or don't have docs, it's really hard to assess. Is the thing working? How do we know? Is it all there? Is it done? So just like starting to draft your docs, having some idea of what the test is up front and communicating it. Is it going to be a blocking test for the release or not? We need to make sure that that's part of the overall process and early. So it's something that I've talked with Stephen about in feature collection right now, where we're getting information from the SIGs, to also be kind of messaging, hey, don't forget docs and don't forget test cases, and And I mean, ideally, the test case is there when the feature arrives, whether the test case is failing initially because it's not implemented yet as a feature, but then we get that change where it starts working as the feature is implemented, or they both come together and the feature and the test code are there and it's provably working. We want to get to that sort of transparency on features, that we're not all just kind of guessing, is it done, is it ready? And as a release team, then we can't do kind of risk management on it. The next bullet there, interdependent features. This is something that we bumped into late in the cycle for 1.11, and I feel like this is kind of a classic software engineering problem. You don't realize what cohesion you have across different things, and you have something that's brittly coupled, and that brittleness bites you. So as a release team and doing risk management, we want to watch for and highlight that and figure out how we can triage and improve it. And that really, I think, that's something to just be mindful of as we go. When you hear feature A and hear feature B, don't necessarily assume that they're unrelated. If they seem related, ask a question. Are these things related? Are you talking? If you see an issue in GitHub and it seems related to another one and they're not linked, pose the question. Talk to the folks associated with it. Should there be a linkage there? Because what happened in the last release was we had something that was a relatively critical feature that was supposed to have been gated by something else that didn't quite make it, and there was sort of an inversion, and it led to what might have been viewed as a security problem even. So, and it would have been completely avoidable with earlier communication. And so watch for those types of things and ask questions. We won't, again, know the answers. We can't make the choices, but by asking the questions, it gives visibility and facilitates moving towards a better situation. And finally, release notes. We have sort of like a bimodal distribution. People either say no release note required or blah, 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 like some whole bunch of stuff. And it's hard to tell. Some of those really verbose things, it's like, did that really matter actually? And the ones where it says nothing, you're like, that clearly is something important. There's got to be more there. So everybody on the team, this can't just be Nick as the gatekeeper on that, or Gwen on issue bug triage is only going to see some subset of things. Like if a bug opens right now and it closes in 5 minutes, Gwen never saw it because she's in this meeting. So it's only the more persistent things that get noticed. And then all of us in aggregate need to just kind of try to have a pulse on things and watch for those little transients that go by so that Nick doesn't end up at the end with a list of 500 really verbose things that seem like actual trivialities, or 500 issues that look really scary that say nothing about what the impact is.
Yeah, I would like to advocate for training reviewers to look at the release note as part of the actual PR. And, you know, you should not be LGTMing a PR if it doesn't have a release note, and it clearly needs one. So
this is one of my pet peeves as well, and I think that we as a release team, we have the opportunity to interact a lot with individuals, but especially with SIG leads. And one-on-one, we can model desired outcomes with individuals, but that's less scalable than with the SIG leads. So if you're seeing trends like that, really remind the SIG leads and their core reviewers and approvers that we need to avoid a tragedy of the commons and work together for some of these really critical quality points to enable the overall aggregate to be more healthy. Aish, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to plus one on Nick's comment, like the same kind of discipline for both tests and docs. And yeah, to your point, Tim, maybe meeting with the SIGs while when you're asking for features, also raising the expectation around discipline for these three, specifically.
Definitely. So feel enabled, even as shadows, one of the biggest potential outcomes I see with the size of our release team is that it's more eyes to notice something that maybe looks a little questionable and to ask the question. There's no harm or foul in asking the question, and best case, it results in a better outcome. So I guess with that, Stephen, can I hand it over to you to talk about current status on features?
Hey, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep. Slightly
Okay,
faint,
cool.
maybe?
Yeah, so there's going to be a little background noise. Oh my God. Right.
We had the background noise, and then it sounds like you muted.
Yeah, I muted. It's super loud, sorry. So I did a little pre-work on the feature side to ensure that one, we were closing out, like we had 1617 8 milestones that were open on Pico that have since been closed out. All of those have been milestones have essentially been nulled out. The features that were initially in the 111 release that were either deferred by SIG leads or effectively removed from the milestone have been added to the feature tracking sheet as an initial step. I've done some quick syncing with all of the feature shadows. There is a draft of the features lead handbook up that I can link to. I will link to it later. But overall, the features process is going well. Aisha, I noticed your comments. I'll be working on making sure that people are aware of the docs, the testing, all of the deadlines as I start to hang. But overall, people are being responsive. I'm seeing people are being more proactive instead of reactive with regards to getting the features updated. So definitely a better stance than
So one thing that I'll throw out there just as a reminder, kind of well, there's two, I guess I'll just say that the next major date that people should be aware of is the end of July. July 31st is feature freeze. So that'll be kind of the initial milestone that we're working towards, getting a really good handle on the set of features that are intended to be coming in.
Yeah, and Stephen and the feature team, if you need any help meeting up with any SIGs or following up anything, yeah, ping me. I'd be more than happy to help you guys.
Absolutely, sounds good. Thanks, Aisha.
And if you want to do that also on Slack, just kind of give a shout out. Anybody else who's interested in whether doing that, or if, say, Aish or Stephen or I are going to a particular SIG on a particular day, their SIG meeting, if you wanted to attend, also just kind of see and hear the conversation, it's a great opportunity just to kind of see how interactions happen. And it's lightweight and friendly and collaborative, so it's nothing to be intimidated by, but it's easy to get a sense of that. All right. How about we shift over to current CI signal with Mohammed giving us an update then?
Yeah, okay. So I've been following up the tests that are on the master blocking and upgrading and stuff. So we do have a bunch of failing tests, mostly around AWS and Kubedium and networking and scalability. So, and there are also multiple flaking tests. As far as updates are concerned, the last I checked, there was one failing test and a couple of flaky tests. But I just checked like 1 minute ago, and a couple more have appeared there. So I'll have to raise a lot more issues now. I guess we need to keep an eye on that, because as we go on, more and more stuff is starting to fail. About flaky tests, I was just thinking about how do we make sure that people are made aware of the flaky tests as well. Like for failing tests, we raise issues, of course, and tag the right people. About flaky tests, I've not worked that much with flaky tests when I was shadowing Aisha, so a little bit more insight on that would be nice. Other than that, that's what the status is. Failing tests and flaky tests are showing up.
Yeah. Flaky tests, I would still go ahead and file an issue and follow up, especially if the frequency of flake is like pretty high. So it doesn't hurt to like file an issue, and definitely, especially if it's in the release blocking dashboard, then we'd want them to look at it sooner than later. I also used to generally send out a weekly flake report. I haven't been doing that for last 2 weeks because I've been traveling, but that also helps people take note of their flake rate. And generally, one more thing, when you send that weekly CI report, maybe if you want to, you can easily call out flake tests there as well. These are continuous failures, and these are like flaky tests that are not giving us. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
I think Eric actually put together a tool for looking for flaky tests, at least for correlating test failures across multiple tabs in test grid. I can ping Eric or maybe Aish. You can connect.
Yeah, that's the one that I use to generate my weekly report.
Okay.
That goes to Velodrome, and I pull the metrics from there. I would resume doing that, or Mohammed, I can also show you from where I look up those stats.
that would be cool. So so I'm already aware of what flaky areas are because I've been taking a look at them. Just a few more issues that I need to raise, which I'll be doing it today.
And I'm not sure if the team broadly would be interested in this, and I suppose I could lead it or give it to Mohammed or Aish or anybody who wanted to volunteer, but something that might be useful early on in the cycle is to just give a little walkthrough of test grid, how, like maybe Mohammed, if you were to just kind of spend 5 minutes like, okay, here I'm going to share my screen. I haven't looked at test grid today. Here's how I click around and look at things and kind of talk out loud and describe what you're seeing, because test grid can be confusing. It's often not clear where you can put your mouse and click and how to tunnel down into actual detail. So I'm seeing a number of thumbs up there. So I'll put that on the agenda for next week then.
Yeah, that's good.
And I was trying to look at GitHub, which I don't know if I'm having internet issues or if GitHub is having issues right now.
GitHub was down, but I think it's back.
Okay. I feel like in the past, somebody, maybe automation or something, was kind of highlighting test flakes, but maybe that was late last year and it's changed.
You mean the Feja bot, the one that?
I recall having trouble with a PR sometime last year where a simple PR that was like changing a few words in documentation was failing on a test, a Kubernetes functional test. Like clearly not related, but I was able fairly easily to click down into something and find that there was an existing issue already open for this set of flakes. I'll try and find that, see if nothing else, I can go find the old issues and see if I can map where that had been coming from. But I don't recall seeing those lately, so it makes me wonder if there had been some automation that fell by the wayside or what. But it is as somebody creating PRs, I had found it useful in the past, and it feels like it could be useful here for us on the release team.
Yeah, if you could point me to some issues, that'll be useful.
Okay. Well, we have about 10 minutes left in the agenda. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? Any comments they'd like to make? Anything they'd like on the next meeting agenda that we can use this time to throw it out there?
One quick thing as a follow-up on the CI, Mohammed, I'm not sure if you already started talking to the GK team or the specific teams to remove the non-blocking tests from the release blocking dashboard, because that was one of the items that came from retrospect, where there are GK-specific tests that are there in the release blocking dashboard, which we're not blocking the release on. So some useful content. That way it'll take out the number of jobs that you'll have to monitor and all of that. It'll make your life.
Got that. I'll have a word with them. Like I'll set up a meeting and probably have a talk with them and see which all can be removed from there.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about? Okay, well, this meeting's been relatively long for an early in the release cycle meeting. I would suspect for the next few weeks our meetings become a little shorter as it's a quieter part of the cycle. And then as we get into later August and especially in September, things will ramp up quite a bit in intensity. So I appreciate all your time today, and I'll schedule a early Tuesday meeting, early Pacific time, for the next 2 weeks, and we can just kind of trial that and see how it goes. And Caleb, you're in Tel Aviv, which makes it hard time zone wise. Would you have availability to chat a little bit later or tomorrow?
Yeah, probably tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, I can make time as needed.
All right, I'll drop you an email and try and get something on your calendar.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, welcome to the team. It's going to be a fun and possibly wild ride, but we are going to make a Kubernetes release in the next 12 weeks. So thank you for the team. It's going to be fun working with you.
Thank you, everybody. It's awesome.